We are back with Erica, and we're going to do casual Q&A based on her presentation, but also diving more into this discovery and relationship to breathing and a sensitive nervous system. Erica, can you tell us a little bit about how you found out you were highly sensitive, what that journey looked like for you?
Yeah. I mean, first, I think I was told my whole life that I was too sensitive, right? And that I shouldn't take things so personally and that it was really not that big of a deal. Like that was a lot of the conversations around me that I needed to toughen up. So I didn't know that being highly sensitive was a thing. I just thought it was like a weakness of character and like I was weak in a way. I remember my parents lovingly teasing me on like how easily I could cry because I would get it, which I know today, but I didn't know back then. Every emotion was overwhelming and overwhelm led me to tears. So anger led me to tears, sadness, obviously, but anxiety, like really high anxiety led me to tears. Like everything, shame, disappointment, it all led me to tears. And so, you know, they really drilled in me that that was not okay or it was not normal in some way. So I thought something was wrong with me. From that, I remember very specific moments in my life where I realized I was not like other people, like being yelled at in school and crying at my desk, you know, in elementary and being like, why is everybody like, why am I crying like a baby? Or having someone yell at someone else. Like I was in a family gathering and there was like a fight and I had to walk away and go into the bathroom and sit and cry. And I had nothing to do with the situation. No one was mad at me, but just the intensity of the situation. And I was sitting there like, what? Why am I reacting like this? So there was a lot of what is wrong with me kind of, you know, things going through. And then I read about it. I just stumbled upon the work of Elaine Aron, and my whole life made sense. And I was like, oh, it's a thing. Oh, okay. And from there, I was like, oh, okay. I'm not broken. I see. This is just the way my nervous system functions, my brain functions. And then I got so curious that I really dove deep and wanted to learn more about it.
I love that. I resonate so much with what you're saying and have a very similar story and can remember these times as a child being overwhelmed by emotion and also unable to get out of it. And that was something that called too sensitive, but then like, why can't you snap out of it? And it was like you
just get over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That trauma loop and that resonance and just reliving it and reliving it and reliving it. And the felt sense of it, not just the memory of it, but the whole felt sense of it. And I came across Elaine Aron's work actually through therapy. My therapist in my early 20s, I mean, I was at rock bottom in terms of mental, emotional health, fried nervous system. And I remember walking in and the therapist said, "Why are you here?" And my response was, "There's something wrong with me." And he's like, "Well, what's wrong?" And I'm like, "I'm buzzing. Things are just buzzing. Like I just can't, everything's buzzing." And that's what I felt like. And he had a reading list for me. And the first book on that reading list was Managing Your Mind. And the next one was The Highly Sensitive Person. And I remember reading, the first dozen or so pages and being moved to tears because like you, I was like, my whole life makes sense. I'm not broken. I wasn't quite at there's nothing wrong with me, but it was like, maybe there's nothing wrong with me and maybe this can actually be used for good, rather than a Achilles heel or this handicap. And I was very intrigued at that time about the spiritual components of being highly sensitive because that was something I was always deeply attuned to, and also had a recognition very early in my life, like grade school, that like people were not having the same experience I was having. And so that kind of fueling more of the something's wrong with me, I'm alone, narrative and sensation. So my next question would be, once you figured out that you were highly sensitive, what did that knowledge give you? How did it change you? What did it do for you?
I think the biggest and the first one was relief. Like, and I hear that in your story as well. I think it brought me a lot more self-understanding and self-compassion, even though just like you, not from the get-go, I was like, oh, I am perfect as I am. It gave me the, oh, maybe, right? Like, oh, like the bridging towards more self-compassion. And then it also helped me make sense of all the coping mechanism I had in my life and the things I was using to numb, because I didn't have a lot of memory of childhood and the things that had happened. And even though I have childhood trauma, at that moment, I was like, nothing, I don't have a good reason to be like this kind of, thinking. And I was struggling with addiction, eating disorder. I was struggling with anxiety and depression, and I couldn't make sense of it. Like, why am I, my life is good. Why am I feeling like this? And I was doing all these behaviors. And when I saw like, oh, I'm trying to soothe myself. Oh, like I felt so much more tender towards me and the things that I kept doing that I was continuously trying to stop or to change, and I couldn't do it because I was not getting at the source of it, right? I was just trying to fix the behavior without knowing why it was really there in the beginning. So I think it gave me more empowerment and more acceptance.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I know that not only have you worked with this in your own life, but you have the experience and you get to work with others on it. So what do you see it provide for others when they learn this? How do you see them transform?
I think the first thing people notice the most is that they're able to reduce like rumination or overthinking, because that takes a lot of weight on them. So they have a bit less anxiety. They can control their overwhelm a little bit more just by learning like the sensitivity of their stimuli, receiving information, processing, and adjusting little things in their life so they can experience less overwhelm quite quickly. And I think that brings more control, because as you learn to feel your feelings and to take care of yourself in the way that you need, instead of doing all the things that you think you're supposed to do, as you learn exactly what you need and you can take those steps, not only do you feel more empowered, but you feel more in control because your emotional response are less like big, right? You're kind of dealing with them in a more skillful way. It's not about changing who you are, but it's just learning how to make the most of it in a way and how to navigate it with the most ease. A lot of things that people report as well is just feeling in their body, right? With anxiety and rumination and overthinking, we're very here in our energy. And so they feel more grounded, more present, like in their life, more present in their physical sensation, because a lot of them too go towards numbing or some variation of it. And then that makes them a bit less struggling in their relationship. I find a lot of HSP really have a hard time feel seen, understood, or loved by their partner because they're hiding who they are. So they're like, they don't really know me. How can they love me? Like all of this is fake, and it spirals out into, some issues in communication and in relationships. So over time, this is kind of the bigger consequence of change and things I see in my students.
Wow. Huge, especially the relational component, because I can relate to that as well. Something you mentioned during the tutorial that I never put together. It was almost like a missing puzzle piece. And I was like, oh, wow. So often I feel like nervous system information is in this frame of like safety and danger. And people tend to be like, well, I'm not in immediate danger. But like for the highly sensitive, it's all the sensory stimulation creates that what we might call like discomfort or tension or overwhelm, which signals that response. So it's not like life-threatening danger, not attack danger, but it is this kind of the alarm system starts going off, and perhaps that tripwire is like more sensitive or gets activated more easily. Anything you'd add to that? Because that was a huge thing for me, and any kind of unpacking that you want to do with that.
I mean, without going into like a big rabbit hole, I think just that understanding that piece where there is like a tripwire, there is like a little bug in the system, because just receiving information from lights, not that are dangerous in any way, just receiving information from sound, from touch, all of this already sends you over kind of your limit. So already your body is responding as if there's a threat. So yes, that's a big piece. And then there's also your interpretation of danger. And the thing is that, as I said, it happens so fast that it's not like you have time to ponder, like, am I thinking that I'm in, danger right now? It's not really like that. But your body, your nervous system, to conserve energy creates patterns, right? Because think of a computer, it's easier to repeat the pattern. It's faster. It takes less energy. So if every time you experience overwhelm, you go into your activation and your parasympathetic response, then it's going to start to do it earlier and earlier and earlier every time to save you time and energy. So it trips you even further because it's trying to help you so much by doing what will keep you safe and alive. But your body is perceiving danger in all sorts of things that are totally fine. And it's the perception that is more important than the fact. It doesn't matter to your nervous system whether there's an actual threat or not. It can't know. Even if it's imagined, even if it's something you're thinking about. And that's why with the trauma loop, it's not happening right now, but you can have a full trauma response years later to something that has happened, right? So these aspects make it even more difficult to stay regulated when you're highly sensitive.
I love it. Would you say that highly sensitive have like a narrower window of tolerance, smaller window of tolerance?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's there, and you'll read sometimes window of tolerance, you'll read window of capacity, and I've even read window of dignity, which I thought was kind of a sweet way to put it as well. But yeah, it's your limit, your capacity for new, challenging, difficult, any of these things that might bring you into a sympathetic response. Within the window, it's normal. And when we say that we have a regulated nervous system, it doesn't mean that we're always in our ventral vagal and we're happy and that's not what it means. It means we're able to go in and out. We're able to fluctuate between sympathetic and parasympathetic in a way that is useful for the moment. Being dysregulated means you're moving in a way that is either not useful or you're going out of that window of tolerance. And this is where the overwhelm lives, right? And this is where your dorsal response is. So if you're in a stress response, think of it as like a bell curve. You're in ventral vagal, everything is good. You have a perception of a threat, you go into sympathetic activation. If you do something, you will go back down. You will regulate yourself. If you're unable to regulate yourself, it will continue to go up and it will escape, it will leave that window of tolerance. And this is where you will start to feel overwhelmed and either collapse, shut down, or use other technique like fawning or trying to fit in a way that is inauthentic and not truthful to you. So those response is when you are outside of your window of tolerance, because otherwise you will go between sympathetic and parasympathetic on and off, up and down, hundreds, thousands of times every day. And that's being regulated. It's normal. And that's why I wanted to mention in the lecture that sympathetic is not bad. Oftentimes we think of the stress response as bad. No, it's super helpful. We need it. Otherwise we wouldn't get anything done during the day. Right? We would not be able to be of this world. We need our sympathetic response. So it's about using it within your window of tolerance. And yes, when you're highly sensitive, your window is a little smaller. It's easier for you to be shut out into overwhelm. So with nervous system regulation, we can widen our window. We can widen our capacity. And this is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to turn the volume down on your sensitivity. We're trying to widen your window of capacity for everything that you want in your life.
Yes. Beautiful. And this kind of weaves in, and I think I'll tie a few things together. So my next question was like, when we don't acknowledge or support this aspect of ourselves, what is the cost? And I think, and I ask that because I have seen a lot of highly sensitives do what you just said, try to turn down the volume on the sensitivity or stuff it. And it to a certain degree, it creates what I would call like a volcano effect, that you stuff till you erupt and you're not really responding to what is, which is problematic. So how would you describe that cost of not acknowledging or supporting ourselves in this sensitivity?
There's so much, and that's what people don't necessarily see, and they think that repressing their feelings or ignoring what their experiences is a solution, because they don't see in the end like what it costs them, right? So the repression of the feelings then makes your window of tolerance smaller. And so you are more reactive over time because things build up. So when something happens, instead of starting at a 0 and making your way to 100, you are already at 80 because you've been like piling things up. And like the one little thing that happens that day is a drop that makes the water overflow on your glass of, nervous system capacity. So you are overreacting to the moment, but you are not from your nervous system perspective. And that overreaction then makes you want to shut down your sensitivity even more because it confirms the belief that there's something wrong with you, right? So there's a loop here that's really not helpful. And then that sense of losing control, because you're like, I don't know why I'm reacting like this. Like this is, they're right. This is really not that big of a deal. That sense of not being in control of your emotional response then adds to your sense of disempowerment, of hopelessness, of helplessness, and it keeps you in a state of shame and stuck in your dorsal response. So it's really hard to get out of your shut down and collapse energy if you're feeling shameful about it. So you get stuck in that loop as well. And then the other big piece that I see with most of my clients and that I've seen in myself is you kind of lose yourself. You lose who you are because you're so accustomed to turning down the volume of who you are, of hiding your sensitivity, that you become not only disconnected because you're trying not to feel, but disconnected from what you want, who you are, what you need, your yeses, your nos, your boundaries. And then you're acting into more of like a people pleaser and just like for other people because you're in this habit of like, well, I can't be myself because this is unacceptable and I won't be loved and I'll be, rejected and I will die, right? This is how our brain functions. Like if I don't stay with the tribe and I'm pushed out of the cave, I will die in the cold and without food. So on a very low grade, we completely lose who we are. And I ask my clients like what they need and what they want or what they're feeling. They're like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So how do you think you're going to get the things you want in your life if you can't even put your finger on what it is you want? So then there's a general lack of dissatisfaction. And then we're not sure why. We're like, I don't really love my job. I don't really thrive in my relationship. Everything feels kind of blah. And like, is this life? Like, is this really all there is to it? So I think those are the big things that it brings us.
So good. So good. I think one of the words that came up for me was like self-denial. Yeah. And how can you expect others to see you and love you and accept you when you're not seeing and loving and accepting probably the most like fundamental and true thing about you?
Yeah. Yeah, there's self-denial, and then there's self-rejection, and there's self-abandonment. And then the people around you will just mirror what you do. People will treat you the way you treat yourself. So you wonder, like, why my partner, rejecting me in some ways? That happened a lot to me in my earlier relationships. Like I felt rejected all the time and I felt abandoned all the time, but I was doing it to myself first. Like I was teaching them how to do it. So you can't be too surprised,
I love it. I love these fierce truths. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for like self-reflection, self-discovery in everything you've said. What is a last takeaway or key things you would want people who are resonating with this, who are like, ooh, this is something that I can see myself in, to use, embrace, work with?
Yeah. I think the key, like the one thing that really makes my client pivot is to learn what it actually means to feel your feelings. Because we kind of know intellectually right? And we have lost the ability to do it just by instinct. So to relearn what it means to give ourselves permission to feel, to sit with the emotion, the physical sensation of the emotion, to learn how to process it out of your body so you don't get stuck in the loops that we were talking about and you're able to just move on, really changes everything. From there, everything kind of snowballs. And it allows you to feel in bite size, which feels doable, and you get less overwhelmed, right? Everything feels less intense. It moves more quickly. Like, people don't realize, but it takes just 90 seconds for an emotion to come through and be done with if you actually give it that 90-second of your attention. Where like and you mentioned this, I would be stuck for weeks on that one thing that someone said when I could have been done in 90 seconds. So then that allows you not only to feel more in control, but to embrace who you are, to even fall in love with yourself, I would dare say, and then experience more of the positive things, because you can't turn the volume down just on shame and just on anger. When you turn the volume down, you turn it down on everything. So you feel less joy, less connection, less excitement, less love. So by allowing yourself to feel all, you can have more of all these things you actually long for. You can have more joy and more bliss if you allow yourself to have a bit more anger and a bit more sadness and let them exist. So I think this is really where people see their life change, when they really look into what it means to feel and how we do it.
If that isn't so enticing, I don't know what would be. That's beautiful. So beautiful and so promising. This will all be in your bio, and people can go there to find the links, but so it's here as well. Tell us where to find more from you, more of you. If people, again, are resonating with that, if they want to turn the volume up on love and peace and contentment, what would be the best next step for them?
So on social, I'm on Instagram only, so they can find me at erica.belanger, which is my last name. If they want to play with free options, there's the podcast, which is called On and Off Your Mat, and has over 240 episodes now. And there's about 25 episodes of solo coaching work that I talk about emotions and sensitivity and all of these things so they can really dive in. I also have free downloads that they can get with those episodes. And then if they want to go further, we can go into really working in depth one-on-one, whether we do it in coaching or eventually once a year, they're the in-person immersions, which the retreats. But most people start by working one-on-one before, because the retreats are like this big thing that we work as a group, and it could feel very vulnerable, but it's also extremely, extremely powerful. So those are the options for people. Start with the podcast and the freebies. And then if you're like, or if today you were like, okay, this is me and I have all of these struggles and I want all of these beautiful things, then you can just jump right in.
So good. Thank you. Thank you, not just for being here with us today, but I know that you have had a long, rich, deep journey. I've always admired the way you dive into things, your studentship, as well as your teaching. So thank you for being here with us, but also thank you just for who you are, how you've evolved. You have my deepest admiration and appreciation. And hopefully we see you a lot more at the school. And thank you for being a part of the challenge.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.